Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome to the third episode of Carrots and Cookies with our dear guest, Grumbles the Dwarf. Hello, Grumbles. Hello, Esu.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us on such actually short notice. Although this episode, when it comes out, it will be like way in the future, I guess, for us right now. But yeah, um, I want to ask you guys how are you doing? Considering the entire chaos, are you guys okay? Everyone's safe?
Yep.
Yep, safe and about as unsound as usual. So situation normal.
Okay. um as you guys know already, Carrots and Cookies, a podcast about the joys and hurdles about content creation, especially mostly like so far mostly live streaming on Twitch, but also we touch on YouTube and other media if we come across it. Mr. Grumbles the Dwarf, I met this humble black and white dwarf on for those who are watching, actually using the black and white filter here with us on Twitch. I have a short story about it. I'm gonna introduce this episode with it. Long ago, a couple of years ago, I tried streaming World of Warships for the first time, and I was raided by a guy called the Grumpy Beard, which a good friend of both of us. And I was introduced into this very very friendly community around Grumpy and Mr. Grumbles and Tiger's Den. It's amazing. World of Warships, a brawler, uh, somewhat World War One, World War Two warship based game, PvP brawler, very hectic. However, has quite a few of very welcoming and very calm communities. And good vibes, as you can see in the corner of Grumble's screen, being one of the most welcoming that I know. Yeah, I got introduced by that raid, and I really never left. You just can't leave all three of these amazing content creators, out of which we have Grumbles today. So I'm gonna let you just introduce yourself to us quickly, and then we're gonna bombard you with the questions.
All right. Okay. I'll steel myself. Then I'm seeing a slight knowing smirk with Esu, so I can tell there's something coming. So briefly, so I guess the first thing about me is I am known as a man of few words. Those who know. Briefly is yeah, I did get into the streaming space, if you will. Um, I've gamed a little bit here and there in my life, but never really been like a full on like proper gamer or whatever. And certainly content creation was something far out of my scope. I probably just a workaholic, and spent far too long working and doing things in offices. And it's anyway, it is what it is. And so I sort of got into this thing because I just stumbled one day. I can't even remember exactly how it happened, but I sort of stumbled onto this Twitch thing, thinking, what's this all about? This is crazy. This isn't normal television. But and it's like, well, it's free. I can just leave it on in the background. And then I'd been playing a game called World of Warships on and off for quite a while, since the closed beta, actually. And funnily enough, it was content creators that I wouldn't have even known that phrase, I think, at the time. Like people with videos on YouTube. You wouldn't even call them a YouTuber or something. It's like just people with videos on YouTube. Yeah, I kind of got I found a few content creators more or less by chance, just by like watching that category or whatever. And one of them was a lovely chap called Kevy Seeb, and NA, I think, still CC. I'm not sure if he, anyway, it doesn't matter. But he demonstrated a way of playing a game to have fun and to embrace a community and promote sort of humor and sort of being down to earth. And things that I very much sort of vibed with, I would say. And conversely, I'd seen some other content creators at that time that were predominantly all about negativity, let's say, from my point of view. This is subjective,
Mm.
it's my personal view on it. Was very much about kind of how mean can we be, how degrading of others and so forth. Not in a way that is against terms of service, but skirting the border of, but basically being very insulting to people all the time, and I thought, hang on, this is not where I see the game and this space, and that kind of was one of the things. So that it may be a lesser part of it, and a more positive point was, well, I like to have a lot of fun, and isn't it great if the world, if you smile, or the world smiles with you, so to speak. So why not bring some smiles and have some fun with people and see if we can share that, and maybe some people will kind of pop in and enjoy it and see a different way of enjoying that content and those products. So that's kind of where I got my start. And now we just have fun and do silly stuff. And I've realized along the journey that I'm more what I would describe myself now as a role player who accidentally plays video games.
It's a
Um,
very very good explanation. And nowadays you're not streaming World of Warships exclusively. Quite the opposite, actually. You dabble in it every now and then, but you stream variety of the games, especially if they give a chance of some software, any kind of role play, really. Um, and juggle between. I really enjoy how you do it. You juggle between role playing and like jumping out of the character to answer the chat. You always have this conversation with your viewership. You're never like ignoring them, or like, of course, if there's like a heat of the moment or whatever. But that's very specific thing for every streamer, I would say.
yeah.
um for those who are curious already, so we're gonna have, or we rather have, all the links in the description, but I'm gonna tell you, all this is happening at twitch.tv/Grumbles the Dwarf. It's a long name, so therefore check the description, click on the link, drop a follow. Grumbles, you are a partner Twitch streamer. I actually don't know personally how long have you been streaming.
It's funny because I was one of the things I was scrambling to look up just before because I thought, well, I'd like to be specific about it, but I'll do the vague thing. I think that's what most people do these days.
Yeah.
The days mold into one another eventually. So roughly, I believe this is going to be quite funny because I'm sure my mods are going to shoot me down, but end of 2018, beginning of 2019, that kind of thing. I'd had a Twitch account for about a year before that, just to start viewing and understand the platform at all, just as a pure consumer. So it's kind of happened fairly rapidly in a short space. So 3 to 4 years, probably, starting my fourth year. And we got partnered. I remember that it was, I believe, Friday was it the 11th or the 13th? I don't know. So there you go. So dates, everybody. A lot of people make a point and write them down, and sometimes I kick myself, but then I just think it doesn't really matter because we're just here for the journey and it continually evolving. One day I'll probably look back and go, I wish I'd written it all down, but maybe that's
Awesome.
what I'll do. Maybe I'll do that
You
after listening back to this podcast.
I'll give you a hint. Like
Mm.
I needed this date for something very specific some time ago, and as we are getting our Hot to partner and all that, you actually have all the dates in your Twitch
I was going to say, I'm
achievement
pretty sure it's in
place.
the
Yeah.
agreement thing. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, probably in the agreement, but the achievement list is easy to like get to, and you
Ah,
actually
yes.
get the exact date
I'm gonna look
if
it
you
up.
need
That's why I'm looking to the other screen. I'm gonna look it up while you said that.
it. Awesome. Okay, so lately I was laughing so much watching you play, especially. It's kind of funny. Another streamer that I wanna have on this podcast, and I'm fairly sure we're gonna have that, is Meyer, and it's I know Meyer from another space, pun
Mhm.
very much intended. we
Yep.
we streamed Star Citizen, and we also were part of another project that unfortunately I think died down completely, but that's okay. Um, and then I've heard you talking about Meyer on your stream recently playing Red Dead Online, and I was like, oh my god, I want to hear two of you in the same lobby or whatever. Absolutely great times. But yeah, like watching you play games like that, you make it so goofy, and it just it's spot on. I just really really enjoy your super. I don't even know how to explain it. Like it's just crazy kind of role play. It doesn't feel like you have. I'm sure you have your like character and the idea, but you. I don't think you ever know where it's going to take you. That's the general vibe that I get from your role playing.
Yeah, that's true. I love, and I can't stress this enough, but like the core of it and some of my passion comes from improvising and just not knowing what's going to happen. And there's multiple parts to that. One part is my short-term memory isn't great. So if I say, "Oh, I had this great idea on Monday," you can ask me Monday evening. I don't know what it was. It's like this is literally your idea. I don't know. If I told someone else or wrote it down, I'm lucky. So that helps me a little bit not to stress about it. If I, because if I say, "Oh, I want to do this really detailed thing." The other thing is I've learned and I feel like evolved or whatever the right phrase is as a role player. To that it's far more enjoyable for me and usually brings better results.
Okay, so unfortunately, we had some mishap with Discord, which interrupted Grumble's explanation of his roleplay adventure. So, since we can't really know exactly when it happened, I think I know on my end, but it's difficult to figure it out, and we're gonna have to edit a little bit, which is fine. Um, Here's what I'm gonna ask you right there. I've seen you lately learning about how to properly role play, and it was mind blowing to me because often we talk about this as we did Esu about like how Twitch itself, for example, is from our side, and then how it is for from the viewer side, as we are viewers as well. Like all of us consume Twitch on both ends, right? And how
Yep.
completely different it is. Role playing, the same thing. You think just think they just use voice whatever VoIP as they play, but it's not. And you going through this journey and realizing how I'll let you explain this. You were playing Eco, I think, when I figured this out. How when you explain the whole thing, where you want to tell your story, but you want to allow others to do that as well. Can you put this into words? This is super. I never role play, but I love and respect role play. I love watching it. It's awesome. I'm not the person to do it, at least not so far. But I really enjoyed you explaining this whole thing. So would you dive a little bit into it?
Sure. And I'm going to pretend that I'm not concerned about contradicting myself, what I may have said previously.
Ah,
I mean, the thing is, it's always growing and evolving and changing, right? You develop
of course.
as you progress. So, yeah, the way I have learned and developed, in large part due to listening and playing with and experiencing the role playing and the talents of many other people, both on and off stream, in and out of games. In particular, a nod of appreciation to the D&D group that I've been in and around for the last 6 years or so. They've just been fantastic in helping me develop in that regard, or as well, I suppose, in some ways, having the confidence to try different things and know it's a safe space, because that's quite an important aspect of role playing that's not often brought to the fore or spoken of a lot. You have to feel comfortable. I personally hope and believe that everybody's got their inner role player within them. But obviously, there's different degrees, and that comfort and that confidence is one thing. And ultimately, joking aside, it might be something that appeals to people or doesn't appeal to people. And some, like you said, Jeg, you rather consume it than enact it. That's nothing wrong with any of that. So what I kind of was talking about during Eco is something again that's developed through my experiences of role playing, in particular in video games, where you've got additional layers of abstraction plus streaming. In parallel to that, it brings its own challenges and amusements. But I realized pretty early on. In fact, I would say very early on in sort of my active role playing, which I've picked this up quite late in life. Probably a tiny bit of it in sort of school days and things, but not very much. And then mostly a big gap. And I guess I've always had the inclination to do it, and imagine stories and made jokes and quips and whatnot, and with people, but never really thought of it as role playing or gone down that kind of route. And I haven't really had any dramatic training or anything like that either.
I'm surprised you still remember this because This was like hundreds of years ago, you being a dwarf.
Well, this all goes the long-term memory doesn't suffer for us
Oh,
dwarves
okay,
because
okay.
we have to hold grudges, forever, you know? Um, uh, yeah, so what I realized is, um, I thought about what do I like? What do I sort of get from it? What do I enjoy the most about it? And what really kind of fulfills me and makes me feel, engaged and excited and sort of rewarding, if you will, on a sort of a humanoid level, is it was the realization that um, I'm not there to tell my story. It's not a monologue. And everything shouldn't be running according to this is how Grumbles wants it to be. Because actually that would result in a really bad script and a terrible story that no one would watch. So
But it's hard to like figure it out. But I have this
yeah,
problem with podcasting, for example. This is not my only podcast, and I get excited about everything that's happening, and I end up talking quite a lot. And I'm actively working on this. Believe it or not, this is so much better than what it used to be. But I have to listen to all my podcasts to figure out where I am, to figure out how my co-host does. Because in the other one, for example, we start fighting each other in the middle of the podcast. It's a very long one, right? It's like 4 or 5 hours long podcast, but we both want to talk a lot. But having a guest, even there, I figured out I talk too much, and I think this would be a big issue. Like, it's great if you're a streamer, right? If that's like the kind of community you have around you that wants to listen to constant, uh, jibber jabber. But for role playing, I think I would really have a huge issue with this, and I'm starting like to be concerned about it in a way. Sorry
yeah.
for interrupting
No,
you.
no, absolutely. I just should note for the audience, I believe that Esu, I have no way of confirming this, but I have a strong suspicion that Esu has her hand on a button that triggers some minor electrical shock on Cheg's end, to the point where he does go too far. Oh, sorry, it shouldn't be. Oh, sorry, sorry. That
We'll have
was.
to edit that
Uh,
out.
yeah, yeah. It was. Yeah,
Exposed.
don't worry about it. But it was it's not I don't really point to one particular moment. I think in some ways it's listening and hearing people talk about not just role playing with them, but talking about their role playing experiences as well has helped. But I think it was in part as well through DMing in the Dungeons and Dragons context, where I kind of accidentally fell into the DM or GM role, because I was a player in a group. I really loved the group, had not been there long, and then the GM at the time it was unfortunately had to leave for personal reasons with anyway, and the group was everyone was like, oh dear, and I was like, I'd been there like effectively 5 minutes feeling, and I was like, and then I sort of said, well, this seems like such a really good group and you're all kind of GMs in your own rights and everything, you know what you're doing. I don't know any of this stuff and the lore and the rules, but I'd love to create some stories together with you, maybe run a couple of one shots and see how it feels. And if you think, and now, like 6 years later, that's history. So, um, what I learned through that was, or the leap I took was, I can't possibly create an entire world and all these things and keep it fluid and entertaining and all the rest of it. And at the very beginning, I stumbled a bit because I got too caught up in like mechanics and balancing, and this is what a fight should look like, and this is how many minotaurs you bring in, and all this kind of thing. And about probably by the second or third session at the latest, I just dropped all of that, threw it away because that's irrelevant. I realized that the very capable group we had were going to be able to beat anything I put in front of them through experience, although they're not that cruel, but they just would win.
They're
So
really
I
good with the
accepted,
dice, right?
yeah, I accepted I wasn't going to win ever, right? And secondly, I realized how creative and fun they were to to jointly craft a story together. And I decided at that point that anything I was going to do in this regard was going to be, as far as possible, um, featuring me, but not putting me in the center or trying to be exclusively about what I was doing. And that still doesn't mean that that doesn't happen, because the ego creeps in and you you get carried away, you get
That,
drawn in
yeah, that's what it
to a
is.
particular line, a particular joke, and I've had a few, like, I call them stumbles or whatever. Ultimately, they're all just part of the learning experience, and as long as you are kind of learning from them and progressing, and you can also be your own worst critic, right? So that happens a lot. I certainly feel very critical about certain situations or circumstances, and if I ever mention it, people are like, "But that was hilarious. That was like one of the best, funniest things I've ever." And I'm like, well, I really didn't feel comfortable in that moment, sort of
A
thing. So,
different perspective, and also it's the
yeah.
same as with like our voice, for example, when you're like,
Mm.
my voice sounds like whatever, but then people come to you and are like, no, I really enjoy your voice, which
Mhm.
is very common for us streaming, right? And so have you ever tried any real life role playing or in a game at all? I used to do role play. I had role playing sessions. I'm going to touch on that a little bit, just a tiny bit. But in games, I never did. But we played Elder Scrolls Online for a heavy amount of time. And you're playing Final Fantasy 14. These are the games where role playing is all over the place.
Yeah.
It's very popular, and I wonder if you ever tried it at all.
Oh, I've definitely tried it. I'm not I would call myself more as like a casual role player. Like when I create my characters in games, I actually play D&D as well.
Okay, yeah.
Or rather, create my D&D characters. I have like an idea of what my character is, where they come from, what kind of a bit of their backstory is, what their motives are, what drives them. Um, but I don't really go into RP sessions and like sit there for hours RPing certain enactments or whatever. But I've had plenty of occasions where I'd walk into an inn and start talking with the people at the bar and dancing and role playing around like that. And the same for Final Fantasy, like just running into people and just, starting to fish together and then talk about the weather and then about our
Mm,
adventures of the day, the monsters that we just walked into, things like that. So very more casual, whatever comes in the moment, a little bit improvising.
okay, okay. So for I've never seen you stream role playing. I don't think you ever did
No.
something like that. I didn't either. When it comes to real life like RP sessions, we had what you were talking about, Grumbles. I've experienced that because it's so difficult to understand. I had a same situation like you, where we had a great. This guy was writing like he had a column in a gaming magazine here back in I don't know like 2000 or something like that, year 2000, and he was all about uh, he was like the best GM in Belgrade. He was known about this, and people would pay sessions to have sessions with him and for him to guide him through like one shots or longer events. And I was part of one of these, and it was so good. Like I think this shaped. Before that, I used to play StarCraft. I used to play games like that. But with that group of people, I went into Magic the Gathering. I started playing Heroes of Might and Magic, and more of like this like different side of fantasy worlds, right?
Mm.
Less spacey and whatnot. And he had to stop our session, which was very long one. It was months and months. We had really well developed characters. We lost 1 out of 7, I think. So like we would gather around once a week, 7+ GM. It was it was crazy. To this day, if I meet some of these people, we talk about this very long adventure we
Mhm.
had. And unfortunately, he had to leave for reasons I don't want to touch on here. So the same one of us, not me, tried to fill his spot and had the same issue. But unlike Twitch, where we can listen to our words, or YouTube, where you can listen to your
Mm.
whatever you're doing, is it podcast or whatever, where you can like police yourself in a way. um he did he, all feedback he got was from us, and we ended up actually fighting over this, and after a couple of sessions stopping it. And it's sad because like now when I turn back and look, it was very important for us to gather at these times and and we had such a good time, and we thought that someone can just carry on the torch, whatever. And then you realize how this is an incredible life skill to have, to be a good GM and let people. And the imagination that sparks if you have a good GM is crazy. You feel like you're part of the movie, or or a book, and oh my god, it's so good. But yeah, I maybe that's not like I did not even talk. I didn't even think we are gonna touch on these things. Honestly, this is a very unscripted part. But that might be why I'm staying away from role playing, because that ended up in such a chaotic, uh, yeah, ending. It was very sad. As a matter of fact, I think some of these people don't talk to each other anymore, and they were friends long before this. That just tells you how important this
Yep.
event for us was. It's crazy.
Yep.
Like we would think about, like we would go home and go to school back then, and think about your character and what you can improve and how you. Oh my god, it was, yeah.
Well, you think that's one of the facets of role playing is, and this is, I guess we touched upon it earlier, assuming it wasn't in the broken part. Is having that safe space, and that gives you the confidence to kind of develop or just test the water with certain aspects of the character or of the circumstance or whatever it is you're trying to create. So we that's been very prevalent, and I've been very privileged to role play together in my D&D group with a group that are incredibly creative, fun, relaxed, in the sense that they call each other out or any of us out if we did something that was kind of BS. But um, it we all understand that the space is there to have fun, and like like an artist's easel or something, and we're all just sort of throwing paint at it and seeing what happens and what comes out of it, and generally 99 times out of 100 it's good. And if something comes up that's a bit sort of awkward, or one of the things that happens is we play with people from different countries, different
Mm,
cultures and whatnot, and occasionally there'll be we don't have any sort of what they call in gamer words, the cool kids these days. Yeah, there's nothing like that because we're just not that kind of group of personalities or whatever. But you can still stumble upon words that say, especially if they're like common phrases or colloquialisms or whatever. And for obvious reasons, I'm not going to say one here, but somebody would say a word. There was one that happened to me, and I'm GMing, and it was like, oh, these are these people, and blah. It was about people who are, I think, I don't want to say the wrong words. Let's say travelers. Yeah, people who,
okay.
yeah, travel through life and live accordingly and so forth. Have mobile
Yeah.
homes, that kind of thing, right? And I used a word that for me was just this is just a noun. It doesn't
Yep.
have any meaning or connotation to it. And one of my players was like, "We can't use that word because
Mm.
it's used like this, and this." And then for
In
me, there was
certain
a moment.
places can be slur,
Yeah,
literally, and
because I was caught because it was like, well, in the context, firstly, we're in a fantasy world. Secondly,
mm,
in the context of me as then the GM and then playing this world, there's complete abstraction, like 100% abstraction. Um, Even though there's certain boundaries where you'd say, well, you don't want to, the Drow have a lot of, let's say, imprisoned people that serve them, and so to avoid using the word like
yep.
slaves
Yep.
here, and talk about that kind of thing. So it's interesting in different spaces where some things become, I think, absolutely appropriately kind of censored in a way, or excluded from the terminology and whatnot. Um, and then there's also a part of me that struggles with things like that in some ways because um, I think if this in this abstract circumstance, I always consider myself someone who can talk about anything. It's not to say my buttons wouldn't be pushed in certain ways, but I very firmly believe in free speech and freedom and not censorship. Because if you start censoring things or putting labels and categorizing things, it's an incredibly slippery slope that we go down.
Yeah.
And but anyway, so like going back to the
Mm.
key point, which is about having a safe space and giving people the confidence. It was good to be kind of brought up on that so that we could again test the water and see where everybody was and see as a group. Okay, are we okay? How
Mhm.
are we? Let's stop for a minute and let's just work out how we're going to go forward with this. And
Like jump out of the the
yeah,
whole thing, and
exactly. say, okay, we
Yeah,
want to
right.
go back, but let's not carry on through the story, especially if one or more people in the room are feeling like uncomfortable but not wanting to say it. And the thing that makes me super proud with the group is that people, that we've created this space where people can just say, "Oh, hang on a minute, can we just stop for a second here?" And we're talking about like one or two things in like 6 years worth of playing together. So it's not like
Mm.
this is like every week. Oh, the dwarf's gone and said this again. God, he's really got to stop complaining about elves so much and whatever. Otherwise, we're going to stop playing. But anyway, and then I take this and connect it to what we're talking about in a video gaming space or in a Twitch teaming space. So you've got these layers upon layers of complexity. So Chegg, I'm not surprised that it's kind of nerve wracking or intimidating because even myself as a not experienced in terms of raw number of years, but in the meantime, in terms of amount of role playing experience and exposure I've had in the last few years, sort of a seasoned veteran at it, which doesn't make you infallible at all. But you've got these multiple layers of things that you're having to constantly, like second by second, process, and that's just what's going through your brain. And then there's the next layer of what comes through the brain and comes out here isn't always the
Yep.
same thing, right? Or suddenly you say it and you're like, oh, that wasn't kind of, I didn't think about how that could come across or whatever the context. And then you've got all the other actors on the scene, and
Exactly, the whole group. Yeah.
it's we've seen a few things where there's little mishaps happen where people get their nose out of joint, and that happens instantly. It's emotional reaction, and it's completely understandable and completely legitimate in the point of view of people freely reacting the way they do.
I think
Then
intent is very, very important, and knowing your group, right? I
Mhm.
come from the background of living on board cruise ships for 10 years, right? And coming from Serbia, that is um, a very conservative kind of nation in a way for different reasons, which you don't know until you get out. Like you think because you live there, right? And then learning how different the cultures are, right? You can't just run and hug everyone you see because that can be, yeah, exactly. Yes, is nodding, but you don't know that because here everyone does it. Back then we didn't have internet to like understand these things, and it's the same. Like in real life, we have this. I think being very genuine and apologetic and explaining that I don't know, and then learning helped me so much because some people get aggressive and whatnot because they don't understand what they did, and just like I think it's the same here, and I think it's the same on Twitch as well. Like I got called out many times. Some people would be like very aggressive towards me if I use certain word, and I would be like, I'm really sorry. I don't know. But from now on, that I know this can be offensive, and like of course I don't want to piss people off or make them feel uncomfortable or anything like that. No, and it's the same. That's really good that you guys can actually jump out of it and like into the real world and be like, okay, so let's figure
Yeah,
this out and
yeah.
get back and freely enjoy this. I'm just gonna say there's a podcast. You're part of another podcast called Exit to Podcast, which when you guys did the first episode, all three of you, the grumbling crew, um, I was pretty sure it's gonna be all about warships. Then one one of the one of you kind of left, unfortunately. But then you and Tigers stayed, and you keep rolling with this, and you've made it into everything and anything. It's a relatively long form podcast, and part of it is always role playing because both of you guys are you have that as part of your life. And I gotta say, super super chill podcast. You guys can find on YouTube. Again, links in description. I know you are also on Spotify. I think almost everything actually, if I'm not wrong by now. And I also hope I'm in a little bit of a crazy situation right now, but I also want to reach out to Tigers and see if we can have him as well because he's super super
Mhm.
nice fella to talk to and full of experiences. um okay, so all of us, well, not all of us, I don't really, but most of us have names for our communities on Twitch. Uh, Esu, you wanna explain yours quickly?
I actually didn't have a name for my community for most of my streaming time, and then I was like, "Oh, I see all these people having like all these cool names for their
Yeah.
community, and I have literally nothing." And my full name is Esutick, and calling everyone the Ticks is just it doesn't do it really well, does it? So, I kind of went in the other direction and went like, well, I'm kind of like an oddball, a bit of a misfit, outcast, in a funky way, and I don't care. I like it. I'm very individualistic, and I think my community is like that as well. So I ended up going with the dorks and oddballs.
When you get raided, they're all using these phrases. It's so silly. You just get
Yes.
bombarded. Grumbles as well. You guys are good vibes community. You want to touch on that a little bit? How did that happen? How did you come up with that?
Yeah, so it started with kind of based on the origin of my own name. Grumbles the Dwarf was actually one of the characters I played in D&D right back when I started, like sort of 6 or 7 years ago. And it was a character I played, and yeah, he was sort of a crotchety old, I believe, hill dwarf wizard. And whenever his magic wouldn't work or things wouldn't go his way, he was kind of like grumpy and grumbly, but there was always a tinge of humor and sarcasm and that kind of very ironic kind of behavior. And so that's where Grumbles the dwarf comes from. And the reason I mention that is because with all the humor and everything, at first I was nicknaming the community the Grumblers because they're grumbling along with me. And I still think of it that way in a lot of moments. But I decided to drift slightly away from that because whilst obviously I fully understand and intend the irony, as we talked about before, things can get lost in translation or
Mm.
just not really come across. So I felt like, okay, rather than go somewhere and say, here's the grumblers, and everyone will be like, uh-oh, things about to go downhill for the stream I've
Here
just
comes
arrived at.
trouble.
I looked at it and I thought about, well, what's the core of the message? The core of the message is that we are a crew of people who are, because we do a lot of things with boats or around boats or spaceships and things like that. So we're a crew and we're full of good vibes. So these days I call it the Good Vibes Crew. And I think that one will stick because everybody gets it. And I see that nobody ever lashed out about being called a grumbler, but it didn't resonate in the same way as being called a member of the Good Vibes crew. And one of the things that I've said for a long time to the community is that the stream, the channel, the community, everywhere it appears is a collective and collaborative endeavor and journey that we're on together. I say to people, and I mean it earnestly, it's not my stream or your stream, it's our stream. And we make it as good or not so good as we choose. So let's have at it. And because I believe that and I live it, I think people see that and can believe in it as well. And it's just become a nice safe haven. So that's where the Good Vibes crew comes from.
Your community quite literally is part of your stream, by the way. And those who feel like, who want to, you quite often play with people who community. Some games I've seen you guys play together in Valheim or Eco or some other games like that where you can, right? But also you are one of the people who, like, this is kind of crazy, like having those quote unquote on demand chat, however we're gonna want to call it, like audio files popping up and pictures and all that. It can backfire big time. I was always afraid of it, but I gotta say, you are the inspiration for me adding a few that make people smile now in my streams. It took flight in your stream so well. Like when you start your stream immediately, it's so silly, and you have many sound bits, a lot of them made by you, a lot of I want to say music as well that surrounds it and all that stuff. And it just clicks in. I don't know how you managed to create this possibility at all. Like especially your mods, they're using a lot of them all the time, including some very, very good ones, and you react to them all the time. Like I would type a message, you would be in the middle of the battle or some role playing and everything, and I would say something important, and then Vipers or some kudos to great crew of your mods. I love them all, they're amazing. But they would use like read the chat, like you would react to it, read the chat. But
Yeah.
also there's a lot like happy little accidents, like whatnot. We're gonna need a bigger boat, and there's so many of these voice clips that your community 100% is part of your content. Quite directly, which is not always it's not a case with me. Like of course my community is part of my entire channel, Esu as well, and many other, but with you they literally are part of your content that airs, and it's amazing, truly amazing.
It just kind of grew organically. The original thinking was I started at some point. I don't know when it was, but in the last couple of years, I said it kind of occurred to me the thought, and I just said, it is our stream. We do this together, and then that kind of just was feeding into a little bit where we were playing with some sound bites and some ideas and the technicalities of that. It's not always as straightforward. It's gotten a lot easier of late, but even a couple of years ago, it was like, okay, this is a little bit more challenging. But yeah, I think to connect it back to the prior topic as well with the role playing, all of it is a part of the journey for me in my lifetime is learning about awareness, self-awareness, and being aware of others, and kind of being in the moment. And yourselves, both of you, that streaming is, that's 90% CPU gone, and maybe there's 10% left for a game or whatever's going on around, and then maybe a cat will appear, or you get hungry, or whatever else happens. So you have these little dips, and so it's a mixture of things where and the organic growth, and then the sort of resonance and the uptake of it all is obviously very pleasing, because you put time and you create these things together, and honestly, it just warms my heart. I did things. It's I guess it's like being some kind of amateur comedian, or whatever, like an artist. I think, or I call myself an entertainer in the meanwhile, and I think it's legitimate. At first, I was like, "Oh, I'm just faking it, calling myself that." But I think in the meantime, I mean it, and I believe it. But it was like, okay, this, probably like, I don't know. I like to imagine 90% of what I'll create or come up with will entertain or make people laugh or smile. And the reality is probably like 69% or less. But the point is, I think where it comes from in its core is it'll occur to me and it'll be like, oh, that made me chuckle.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll probably make some percentage of people
Yep.
chuckle, and
Yep.
and because of the way the community is and becoming more and more, tight knit, and more caring for one another, and aware of each other as well. Because that's one of the things that warms my heart the most, is when you start seeing people arrive and saying hello to one another and sharing conversations, and then you have that moment where your ego says, "Why are they not talking about me or what I'm doing on the screen?" And then it's like, no, that doesn't matter. Like,
Perfect. That's
um,
no,
yeah.
we never brought this up, but see, and this is why. It's one of the reasons I we talked about this before. Is Sue and me. It's like there's so much that we go through and we don't even realize, and this is one of those things. Like there are streamers that are, hey, it's about me and stuff like that. But I think every stream I watch is that you go in and you say hi. Like I will always say hi to the streamer and chat, and then people would say hi Cheg, and then I would at every one of them and be like, hey, Lanovar, hey, Vipers, whoever is there, right? And you're gonna meet these people here. Same goes for Esu streams. Like it just, and I know when people come to me, like they know who to expect, right? And how, yeah, it creates such a friendly just feeling. Not only just it's obviously community, but like it's just such a warm feeling to see that your stream buddies, the people who are you spending such a long time with, are actually kind of gluing together in a very natural way and becoming, I don't know, friends, you
Yeah.
could say, right?
Yep.
In today's, chaotic times, it has so much value. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
not talking about only what's happening now, but like, throughout the COVID, for example, where socializing is such a difficult thing. We
Mhm.
we get so it's so funny, right? Like, us who are streaming, we are somewhat very isolated for a lot of our free time, anyways. Uh, and we know how big this online presence and communities that are created around us and our friends are important, and phew, so much value there.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's and again again it was nothing going linking it I suppose with the improvisation aspect as well. It's not like it's some sort of master script or plan or whatever. I guess if I was smarter I might do something like that, but I've never been a strategist. I live in the moment, and a lot of my life, not most, a lot of my life was spent kind of reacting and just seeing what happened. Although I always acted and did what I needed to do. But through this journey and becoming more self-aware and realizing that actively listening and being supportive, or at least just being present and having some compassion and empathy with people, how important that is. And that not in a sense because see I it it's meaningful on a kind of on a sort of life form to life form level, in a way
Of
to put it,
course, you
and
listen to someone's issue and help them just be heard, even though it's just in the form of text, and you reflect on it. They know they
Mhm.
can say, they're not going to upset you. I mean, I'm talking about, like, in general, us
Yeah.
streamers who do this, we have very warm, like, relationship with a vocal part of our communities. Obviously, we have a lot of people who just lurk there and enjoy, which is absolutely great. I'm not calling people out or anything like that, but it's very meaningful. And I know, like, from my experience as a viewer, there are and this is kind of crazy. Like, in certain channels, what you can say and what you cannot, like, how you're going to change the whole atmosphere and everything. So y- you learn slowly. Same viewer, being a viewer, like being constantly on Twitch, enjoying different communities, is also a learning process. And I think that all glues us together, like, as like,
Yep.
live streaming, or like content communities, whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
I have a question, or
Mhm.
rather two questions that we're gonna ask everyone who comes here. The first one being, what is the biggest hurdle, the most difficult part of your content creation so far? Like, if it almost made you stop, or anything that you think, even like, when we started with this, is like, there's a lot of things that we can't really share with our communities during the live streams. It's very
Mm.
difficult because of what I've just said. It changes the whole course of the stream, makes people, bummed or whatnot, and that's not what you want to do, right? But things still happen. So if you want to share something like that, because it's completely different in my opinion, because people come here to see things, right, on demand. They can opt in and out. It's not like it's live stream and whatnot. So if you want to share something like that, that would be awesome.
Sure. So a couple of things spring to mind. One is more specific to streaming, and the platform and content. Um, and um, and it was a really, really fascinating, not enjoyable to experience, but I'm grateful to have experienced it so that I know of it and I'm more aware. And I guess the adage of that which doesn't kill you makes you stronger, sort of thing. And that sounds like some level of exaggeration, perhaps, when I talk about the actual topic. But one of the hardest things was um, well, there was a couple of moments, but certainly last summer, what I refer back to sort of somewhat jokingly, but also somewhat realistically, as the summer of discontent, where I went through this kind of feeling very traumatized by movements and decisions and business and it wasn't all just one thing. There's specific, products and whatnot where I felt very much suddenly woken up and shaken out of my comfort zone by a long way, like thrown into orbit away from it. With regards to the content, some of the content I was creating, and sort of one of our main sets of content, and it put me into a very, very uncomfortable position where I felt really out of alignment with with where the company was going and the way the game itself was developing, and some of the nuances around things like gambling laws
Hmm.
and ratings and stuff like that. This is just one example. I don't want to hammer too much on that because there's been so much said and done about that.
I, I think it's fair as well, because as a
Yeah,
content creator, even if you are a variety streamer, so to say, you usually have your home, right?
yeah,
And you depend so much on your
yeah,
home game, so to say, but
yeah,
or any other game that you're playing on a regular basis. I know exactly what you're talking about. If you want to share it, that's perfectly fine with me. I know.
yeah,
I also know that changes have been made that you welcomed and whatnot, but I agree with you.
exactly.
There's no doubt. I think there's a lot of predatory things that happen in gaming industries.
Yep.
The kids especially are not very well protected in a way, which I don't think that's only gaming industry, but in general, like
Hmm.
clicking on "I'm 18." Sure, that's
Yeah,
gonna stop
yeah,
someone from
yeah.
watching,
And also,
certain
what a
explicit content or gamble or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah, precisely. And obviously, just to tag on to that, because I know we all think the same. I'm pretty sure we do. It's not just children that have these
No.
issues. So things. What really was the case, that things that had been in place in the framework there for a long time, but were maybe very subtle and or just you don't wake up and you don't notice it and you don't think it through, right? And a few things happen, and suddenly I woke up and I did some research and I listened and spoke with a few people that I cherish and respect their opinions of. In particular, Charade and her statements about the situation, and it really it really hollowed me out, on an emotional level. I was like, oh my goodness, I can't in good conscience continue for the time being. And yet, as you said, it was one of those home port kind of pun intended situations, and it was like, what do I do now? And actually, I kind of made a mistake because I forced myself to continue instead of taking a break with that particular product for a bit longer than I should have done, and it was playing a lot on my mental health and I don't exaggerate, sort of traumatizing me.
And you were
And I
vocal about this, which is crazy. So you
Yeah,
you were vocal about this, you explained it, and this is something we're gonna see repeating a lot, because you have your
mhm,
community, they're there with you, but back in your head you never know, because this is the game that brought you to sort of where you are, and most of us have this one game, right?
yep.
Uh, so
It is for the most of the time because you get into it. The vast majority of people start. They don't come in thinking I'm an entertainer or I'm going to get into trying to entertain and stuff. They come in saying I play this game and I'm going
mhm.
to share this with people and hopefully people like it and whatnot. So yeah, that, again, that's in a simplistic form. That's how most people sort of fall into this situation and sometimes it changes and sometimes it doesn't need to change. It just takes off and works for people. That's also
Mm.
cool. So that's one example. And um, another one in terms of hurdles is a little bit about how the Twitch platform, specifically, kind of operates, and not one specific incident, but just one. I like to think of myself as a competent communicator. Doesn't mean I get it all right all the time, but I try my best and I learn.
All we
Um,
can is to try, right?
yeah, well, the sort of the key to that is really always understanding, never forgetting that any of us, are fallible, that we can make mistakes. So if you can accept that you can make a mistake, then maybe other people are too, and that way, that's a place to start building bridges and find a common ground, even if you don't agree with one another. So um, Twitch, there's a few things. The way the growth. The non-marketing of people, or discovery, whatever you want to call it, the where you're kind of just left on your own. Again, if you depending on what you want from the platform, this is not necessarily wrong for the vast majority who just want to come on, casually play some games, see a few people, meet a few more, great. But if you want to sort of build more from that, you're very much left on your own out in the wilderness or out in the depths of space. And it's like, oh, I hope somebody floats by soon with some oxygen and a sandwich. And so there's that aspect of it. And then I would couple this. So it's not one thing, but like I couple it with um the numbers game, the sort of the big data, the numbers aspect. Big data is the wrong phrase for this, but the number crunching, and you've got to have n amount of viewers, you've got to achieve this number to get to this
Mm,
affiliate status, then you've got to build and build and build, and you've got to, and this where a lot of the one game thing or your core game comes from, because if you can find that core game that you really enjoy and you can entertain with that because you're genuinely enjoying it and lost in the moment, then you'll build, and eventually you'll probably get to those numbers, unless you've picked something that really nobody is interested in, and then that's just
Also,
bad luck.
if you have it as an regardless of which way it is, because a lot of people think, and we all have this, right? And for those of you who are not watching but just listening, you would see how much this strikes for both me and Esu, and we're like nodding constantly because these are big difficulties that you struggle with as a streamer. But there's a lot of folks that are like, I mean, you know this. Like, oh, what? This guy's sitting there playing a game, and oh, look, they just had a $50 donation. What a life! I can do this, right? So there's a lot of people who just try like that, figure out there's no way you can just sit there and
Yeah.
play the game unless you are an extremely high level pro in esports or whatever, which we touched on before. But that's a different bucket from us
Yeah.
here, right? And but if you have it and you want to dive into it and you want to build yourself and your community, then yes, and it's such an issue. I agree. Sorry
Yeah.
for interruption.
No,
Yeah.
no, not at all, not at all. Like this is our open conversation on it. So
Yeah.
so the hurdle, I suppose, I would describe as I do want to state as well. Sorry, before I go any further, is um, for all of the shortcomings and nuance involved, I do think it's still a fantastic platform and the platform to go to if you want live stream content. It doesn't. I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing that there isn't enough competition. Hashtag where did Mixer go? But I still think that there's so much more strength and unity. But I guess I'm basing this predominantly on my view of how much variety of content there is and how wonderful it is to see and embrace all of that different content. So I guess it's more about the fact the people that are utilizing the platform, the vast majority,
Yes.
to do something that is a positive experience for their respective communities and for overall people's kind of mental health and for good purpose, the vast majority, and the rest of it is all subjective. I'm not here to judge anybody's content. So
I'm gonna
um
be brutal and say
mm,
I you can put this in one word. I think you're gonna agree. The word might be a little bit heavy, but I I I I just say it's a monopoly that Twitch has over the streaming, platforms, and unfortunately, there's no competition, and this is not healthy for anyone except for Twitch, because they can do whatever they want. They don't have to eat to every call, and I really hope that in near future we're gonna have some solid competition there for maybe YouTube or other platforms. However, I don't want to get into this, but it seems like streaming services are nowhere near lucrative as, for example, something like YouTube, where it's more of like a stored video that can be rewatched and then the ads and all that stuff, right? But
yeah.
yeah, which is sad because it's such a great project. I've been watching Twitch much longer than you, Grumbles, since it was
Mm,
just in TV, where this was just a silly idea that someone came up with, and it just bloomed so much. And knowing how much this means to a lot of people, including
mm.
myself and you guys, it's a shame that there's no more competition. Yeah, hopefully it will evolve somewhere else in the future.
Yeah, I hope so too. I mean, again, that's what I mean. Even though I agree with you, and I think monopoly, because it de facto it is right. That's the reality. If you want VODs, you go to YouTube. If you want live content, you go to Twitch. it's not going to be 100% for everybody, but that's 99.99 recurring, right? So I agree that's not a healthy situation. Nevertheless, I'm not. I definitely am not like a Twitch basher kind of thing. One thing that
Yeah.
I thought today, actually, Chegg, and again, we're not getting into politics or current events and stuff like that, but not ignoring them, but just that's not the purpose of what we're doing here. But there was one thing that struck me. I don't know. I just had the thought today, but I remember there's a lot of this like do better stuff that does the rounds, right? This trendy like, and Twitch do better. And I thought to myself, do you know what? There's war and conflict going on everywhere. There's COVID. There's this. There's that. There's the other. There's mental health not getting the awareness and the openness of discussion and conversation. There's you name it. There's
Mm.
so many. I'm not sure that we need as much. The thing that made me think of it was the artisan bashing that's just started happening and all the rest of it. I don't want to get into that. That's just released, but I guess it's about outrage and how people get so outraged. We're so connected, and we haven't had time really as a species to get used to this whole connectivity and all this interweb stuff. It's been around a while,
Mm.
but it's still relatively new compared to everything else we've ever
Exactly.
learned and known historically, right? As a
It
species,
has time
and
to evolve. Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah.
So we're very, very primitive, sort of, and sometimes it gets me a little bit. Confused and frustrated with the sort of the outrage and the where it's directed and the energy. And it's like, if we just maybe club together and creatively use that energy for, I don't know, let's feed everybody. But again, I'm going to get off my
Oh,
soapbox.
and it happens though, right? We have
Yeah,
like crazy charity events on Twitch and
yeah,
so much help around. I think the problem is it's really every issue, or it's the same as in like the games that we play that are predominantly PvP games, for example, where every difference strikes each person directly, and then if each person has a platform of regardless of which side, you're gonna hear it, right? So
yeah,
it piles up a lot of negativity. And I have this pizza story that I say all the time. So uh, we can talk about, like, for example, World of Warships. People tend to not like certain type of ships, and they will be very vocal about it. I have a pizza story that should reflect. It's very short. If you go to a fast food place and get the pizza and there's a cockroach on it, God forbid, right? You're gonna throw it. You're gonna tell everyone around you, guys. There's like this is not the place to eat. Look at this, right? Of course. However, if you, at least here in my neighborhood, if you get to a fast food, you buy your pizza, you taste it, and it's awesome. It's really, really good. You're not gonna stop and turn around and say, "Hey, everyone, this pizza is amazing." We just don't live in a way, like, it sounds normal, right, to share what's good, but in a way people are going to start looking at you very awkwardly and judgily, and are you paid, and like all these things where it's just a really
yeah,
good pizza. And
yeah,
therefore I think we are very vocal about things we don't like, while the majority of people who enjoy something that we don't are silent and playing and enjoying the content. So I think that it's the same with games, but also with our platform that we all are a part of, right?
yeah.
I agree. Twitch does a lot of things very, very well.
Yeah. I mean,
There.
I'm just happy. I guess not happy. I'm very, very pleased at how stable and available it is. And there'll be people rolling their eyes and, well, what about this thing? What about? But ultimately, if you
Oh,
think about the
I agree.
complexity, the volume of people, the volume of traffic, the volume of video, if nothing else, right? Uncompressible, huge chunks of data, and the connectivity to devices and people all over the world, and this, that, and the other. And yes, there's things can always be like tweaked here or improved there or whatever, but the bottom line is every single day, 24/7, year upon year upon year, right? You can go and access something that somebody ordinary, somebody like any one of us, you don't have to be some big billionaire TV company or, multimillionaire TV host or whatever, right?
Hell, you can do it with your
Anybody
phone,
can,
man. Like,
yeah,
you
can
really
just
don't
be
need
there
anything.
and pop on and go, "Hi, how you doing?" And I'm having a good day or I'm having a not so good moment or whatever, and you can just be there with people and communicate and connect and find a space or create a space together. And I think that's kind of phenomenal and still new on this sort of evolutionary scale of things. So anyway, I just wanted to tag that on because otherwise we talk about some negative points or this and that. So I think the wrap up the hurdle point, numbers is just necessary because of the way the system and the platform works, right?
And
In
humans,
the
I would say. We
Yeah,
get tickled by
yeah,
numbers,
true,
right?
true. We're definitely obsessed with that stuff. And it is this cliche, but it does bear repeating, but or maybe adapting in some way that I don't have right on the tip of my tongue. But you gotta kind of find a way. Or I think the advice I always got was ignore the numbers, forget about the numbers. That's impossible. You can't. It's a numbers game. Part of it is a huge chunk of it is. What you have
Yeah.
to do, I think, in my experience, is what's helped me to avoid being sort of depressed or worried or anxious about those kinds of things is you have to kind of boil it down a little bit and focus and remind yourself why are you here. It might not be the same reason you started, but why are you here now? Why do you want to continue to be here? What is entertaining to you? What do you think will resonate and engage not in a growth sense, but in a one person turns up and I want to put a smile on their face. And if it's 100 people, great. That might be 100 smiles or 50 of them, whatever, and the others are rolling their eyes. I don't know.
Very true.
You've got to. I think that my advice to anybody would be, um, don't ignore or forget the numbers. Learn about the numbers, what it means. Be aware of them. Don't obsess. Think about what you can do to make tweaks if you're not happy or comfortable with them. But don't let yourself obsess on them to the point where you are checking your numbers out every single day, checking,
Or
where
during the
where's
stream. Like just
well,
turn it off during
certainly
the
not.
stream. Oh my
No,
god.
because if you're doing that during which it can happen, and it does,
Yeah.
I glance because it's written there on the
Ah,
screen, but I'm
you
not
can
like going,
remove it.
"Oh." Yeah, oh,
You can
I
remove it.
know, but it's like out of the way at the bottom. Anyway, um, I, um, I my advice is, um, learn to be aware of it and focus on what you're doing, what you're creating, how you're creating and engaging with people, and whether that's fun and whether that's still in alignment with where you feel your sort of core is, where you want to be creatively and what you want to kind of emit. And also what you're receiving. How are people, what's the feedback you're getting? Because that is by far and away the thing that counts. That's the meaning behind it.
Mm,
Because if you're not, then you on some level, whether it's conscious at this point or not, you will be kind of degrading, wearing yourself down over time, without realizing it. So you can't ignore
very
the
true.
numbers, but be aware of them, understand what they mean, and then just put them a little bit to one side and say, okay, not right now.
Yep.
I wish,
Very
on that regard, I wish that the partner process was a bit more transparent, that the feedback was more granular, that and that you weren't in my it may be a simplistic way of putting it, but it feels almost like you're punished if you move away or like because it's evaluated in a lot of cases on raw numbers. There's various things on a secret checklist somewhere, of course, right?
Yep.
But on ostensibly on the surface, it's these few criteria, and I've seen people really suffer. And we did a thing where we split stuff up and we put non-core content somewhere else for months, so that the core content was in the place it needed to be to tick the box. And it was kind of driving me nuts because I had to keep telling people, look, if you want the other content, go over there for a bit
Mm,
and we'll be back with you in a while. And it worked out for the better, and not everyone has to do that, but it depends what stage you got into the game and what you're playing and what the trend is at that point in time. Whether you get that little bit of luck. So
I really think the whole partner program on Twitch is very unhealthy for mental health of streamers. Which maybe we might eventually have some kind of a special about this because it's a very very important point of many streamers for so many reasons. Even like when you reach it, what then, and how it affects different streamers and whatnot. It's crazy. Okay, I have so many more questions, but we are at the end of the hour. Before we call it, uh, I want to mention a few things, but also, Esu, do you have any questions for Grumbles?
Not right now. I've been listening with my full attention, and I have to say, you dabbled literally in everything that I wanted to maybe address or talk about, or you already pointed it out perfectly. So thank you for that. And it really uh, goes to show for me that these podcasts is this episode I'm not talking a whole lot, but when I have a guest that I know more, I might
Exactly.
be talking more, and Chad might recognize things more from his own journey. Is that you're listening to other content creators and you're recognizing things of your own journey where you thought you maybe were alone in it, and you're definitely not alone in it. And it just feels nice to listen to other content creators, um how they picked it up and what they did with it. So thank you for that.
I, exactly. Sorry, Grumbles. We're gonna use you a little bit here and talk about it because our podcast is brand new. This is third episode, and I just want people to know, for those who maybe joined just for this episode, the way we do it, both of us are producing this together, and we spread around and try to find at the beginning, folks that are creating content that we know personally, as their viewers, or we create communities together and whatnot. And therefore there will be episodes where I will talk more with the guests because I know them better, and then there will be, we're actually having an issue where one of our guests is unfortunately not feeling too good, which came through ESO, and I don't know much about him, right? So it's gonna be this back and forth where one of us will probably listen and ask a question here and there. Uh, but yeah, and then obviously we're gonna have some conversations every now and then. Now, Grumbles is just a person that you can listen to for hours, really. This is and not only that he's a wise old dwarf. By the way, how old is Grumbles the dwarf? I'm not talking you about, like, I'm not talking about you personally, but how old
Yeah.
exactly is Grumbles the dwarf, if you know, or roughly?
He is roughly 220 years old, around about that. I've stopped putting a precise number on it because
Yeah,
then
yeah.
people
Well,
call me out all the
exactly.
time.
Yeah.
Like, look, you don't know how I calculate it.
I can definitely tell the age and the wisdom.
Yeah, yeah. Wise old dwarf. Grumbles, it's an absolute honor. This whole episode, I have my personal chaos going around because I'm relocating to another country. Esther just came back from another country. We got you like in couple of days. You're very busy. You stream 2 times a day when you stream. You also work, if I'm not wrong. I don't know, like I don't like you don't have to go into details, but you're a busy man, and I am very very grateful for you finding the time and joining us in at the very very early stages for our podcast. I'm gonna ask you to just briefly go over where can people find you. We didn't even touch on your brand new YouTube channel that has probably needs. It's almost there with being we getting that monetization. You need about just about 900 plus people
Yeah,
to
exactly.
subscribe.
Like,
Almost
yeah, a
there.
couple of days will be there. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's an
Yeah,
ongoing joke, by
people.
the way. I wouldn't. I know Grumbles is okay with this, by
I
the way,
love it.
guys.
Oh
It's
yeah,
it's a new
yeah, yeah.
project for him,
You
and
keep
yeah.
poking me. You keep poking me. If
Yes.
I get to 100,000 and I get that nice shiny thingy bobby, you can go. There's a new one now for 200,000. When did
It's
you
like
get that?
only
Yeah.
900,000 for 1 million.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what I've always been saying on the Twitch channel. Like when I get follows or we hit a milestone, I go, "Oh, we're nearly there. The goal's 1 million." Remember?
Yeah.
So thanks for that. Yeah, people can find me on twitch.tv/Grumbles the Dwarf. The same thing on YouTube without the Twitch bit. The same thing on Twitter. Um,
Very active
uh,
Twitter. Awesome Twitter.
yeah,
You
I
guys
try
need
to
to
post
follow.
on there. Yeah,
Yes.
I try to just have a little bit of fun. We post when we're going live, but I'm one of these people. I don't like a standardized bot. Hey, this is live. I try to put a story in there or tell you what we're on about or what vibe we're feeling right now, that kind of thing, and try to follow up
Occasional
if I.
photo appears as well, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
sure.
exactly. So watch that space. So yeah, that's where you can find me on all those social things. We're in the this year. I'd like to briefly mention that we've got a pledge for 2022, which is that a minimum of 69% of all income to the channel through all sources goes to charitable donations. We are aligned with Hope for the Day, which is a program, an organization taking care of mental health issues and suicide prevention. Something dear to my heart. Gone through various things of myself and family and friends and whatnot over all these hundreds of years. So be assured that if you do come and support, you know where a lot of that stuff is going, and it's a minimum because we do charity events every once in a while, and when we do a charity event, 100% goes to the cause that we're supporting. So that's our pledge for this year. And again, thank you very much, Esu. Lovely to meet you. Chegg,
Likewise.
lovely to talk to you as always, my friend.
Always, yeah.
And
It's,
hopefully my
sorry, I'm going to
DM.
interrupt you for a moment
Yeah,
because this is something also I wanted to touch on. You very often do charities, but not only that, you shout out our charities all the time. You will host or suggest other streamers to when you are playing together to host charitable events, and I just want to thank you for that. Really, not many people are in the position to do this because some of us just can't for different reasons.
yep.
Uh, for those who can and are willing to, I am forever grateful. Your charities are also really taught very much taught through, and you always sit down and explain all that. So unfortunately, an hour is only 60 minutes long, but yeah, it's worth mentioning. And guys, if like you're gonna meet me there for sure. It's almost like I have many homes on Twitch. You'll see me in Grumbles place. I really cannot suggest more visiting the Good Vibes stream. Thank you
Yeah.
so very much, both of you, for joining us for our third episode. And yeah, if you have any questions, suggestions, you can leave them in the comments. If it's something interesting, I'm definitely going to ask Grumbles if he's not around because it's difficult to catch up on. He's in so many places, but who knows? Maybe he's gonna answer himself. Yeah. And all the links in the description. Click on all these links. Follow Mr. Grumbles and enjoy the free content, man. It's the free content and it's good vibes. With that said, have a great day. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Peace and love all.
Peace and love.